Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another exciting episode of Trigger Warning Radio. I am your host, the Kaiju Conservative. So, Jim Acosta and CNN ran crying to the courts after Jim Acosta's press pass was revoked from the White House after he basically assaulted an intern who was trying to do her job on national television. So, in a nutshell, I'm not going to get into the order here, but in a nutshell, the Judge Timothy J. Kelly, D.C. Judge, Trump appointee, ordered that Jim Acosta's hard pass be returned to him because his Fifth Amendment right to due process was violated. Now, the long and short of the order basically says that, you can kick reporters out of the White House. The White House does have control over who enters and who does not, but there has to be some due process in order to kick people out, and that was not followed here. So it opens the door to kicking Jim out in the future. It doesn't say he's there permanently or anything like that. The other interesting thing about the ruling that I noticed is that Judge Kelly did not say that the White House had to call on Jim Acosta. So the White House could conceivably give him his press pass and just never call on him ever again. In fact, that may be what the White House ends up doing. They've gone ahead and they've basically issued a statement saying that there's going to be a code of conduct coming for the reporters for the White House press pool, and that will be coming out shortly. And there will be consequences for violating that code of conduct as well, probably up to and including removal or revoking your hard pass if you act like a whiny little douchebag like Jim Acosta does. So this ruling opens up a couple of different options in my mind for the White House with regards to press passes. A couple of different things that they can do here. One thing they can do, obviously, is they can appeal it all the way up to the Supreme Court. There's a chance they may get a favorable ruling out of the Supreme Court. There's also a chance, I think a pretty decent chance that the Supreme Court will probably uphold the lower court's ruling. I would call it a 50-50 chance. The other thing, that they could do, another option is the intern could, file charges on Jim Acosta or request a restraining order or anything like that. I don't see that happening too much, though, because that exposes the intern herself to all manner of intimidation and things from the left, from the media, and Antifa types as well. So I don't really see that happening at all. The other option, again, is just not to call on Jim Acosta ever again. Like I said, the judge specifically said that they do not have to call on Jim Acosta at all. The White House can just completely ignore him, and that would be within their rights, would not violate Jim Acosta's First Amendment rights or his right to due process or anything like that. So that will probably be what the White House does, and then when Jim Acosta makes a spectacle out of himself, they'll go ahead and they'll revoke his hard pass again after going through the quote-unquote due process that they are setting up. What I think needs to happen, though, a couple of things. I'm going to tell you what I think should happen and then what I'd like to see happen. So what I think should happen here is I think the White House needs to give Jim Acosta exactly what he wants. It's very, very clear. It's been clear for the last 2 years that Jim Acosta is using the White House press conferences to grandstand, to build up his own brand and to get himself into the limelight and into the spotlight. It's not about asking hard questions. It's not about being a journalist. Jim Acosta, like many journalists today, has absolutely no idea what journalism is. He doesn't know how to be a journalist. He's an activist. That's what he is. He's a member of the resistance. He's not investigating. He's not informing the people or anything like that. He's not presenting facts and letting people decide for themselves. He's protesting, and he's turning himself into the news, and then he reports himself as breaking news. Essentially, that's been Jim Acosta's formula for the better part of the last 2 years. So he very, very clearly wants to make himself a spectacle, very clearly wants to turn himself into the show. So I say do it. Let him do that. Give him exactly what he wants. Hell, call only on Jim Acosta from this point on. Sarah Sanders should next press conference when Jim Acosta's there, she should get up and she should say exactly that. She should say, Jim, very clearly you want these press conferences to be all about you. So here we go, Jim. Go ahead, ask me any question you want, and just take questions from Jim Acosta for the next half hour or so. How long do you think it would take for his fellow journalists in there to turn against him? You know, journalists today, they have a very high opinion of themselves, ladies and gentlemen. Reporters in general, they're not reporters anymore. They're journalists. They're these learned people with degrees and things like that. They're changing the world, and they can't do that if douchebag Jim Acosta is monopolizing their time every single solitary press conference. Yeah, you had journalists backing him up. Even during the press conference, you had people defending Jim Acosta when Trump was yelling at him and calling him a rude, horrible person and things like that. How long do you think that's going to last if, Jim is the only one getting questions, for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or however long it takes? I think you will eventually see the press against Jim Acosta and CNN, and I think in a couple of weeks, after a couple of weeks of that, you'll either see Jim Acosta trying to cede his time to other reporters, which, if the White House does this, is not something that they should allow. They shouldn't allow Jim Acosta to cede any time. Every time he tries to push it back towards another journalist, Sarah Sanders should say, you should apologize to the journalist and say, I'm sorry, but this is Jim's time. We're talking to Jim now. Jim, go ahead and ask your questions, whatever questions that you want to do. I think in very short order, you will see people starting to turn against Jim Acosta, and I think you'll see either Jim Acosta moderating his behavior quite a bit, or you'll see him replaced with some other CNN reporter who is more agreeable for the press pool. Now, that's what I think. That's what I think should happen. That would be the strategic and fun way to approach this. What I want to see happen is I want to see them sit Jim Acosta front and center next to somebody from InfoWars. Not Alex Jones or anybody like that. One of the more minor personalities. Probably not Paul Joseph Watson, because I don't think he's actually in the States. I think he's over in Britain. But one of their other reporters, just somebody. Hell, it could even be an intern or something like that. Just sit him right next to somebody from InfoWars, and every time Sarah Sanders looks Jim Acosta's way, call on the person from InfoWars. I think that would be absolutely delicious. I think it would be hilarious. I think it would annoy the ever-loving shit out of CNN and Jim Acosta, and probably the press in general. I don't think it's ever going to happen, but man, oh man, it would be fun to see. Hey guys, thanks so much for listening. Let me know what you think about all this in the comments section below. As always, if you liked what you heard, leave a like and subscribe to my channel. Both those things help me out quite a bit, and I will see you all next time.